Welcome to episode 198 of Your Career Podcast with Jane Jackson and Karen Tisdell. With a career journey that spans copywriting in the UK, corporate training in Perth, recruitment in Perth and Sydney, and onto entrepreneurship as a LinkedIn trainer, Karen Tisdell has a wealth of experience and a wonderful story of career change to share. Our paths crossed in Sydney a couple of years ago, and I was so impressed by Karen's enthusiasm in all she does. We share a passion for LinkedIn, helping people and businesses to brand themselves effectively. So I thought Karen would be a perfect guest for Your Career Podcast. Now, if you need help in your career, you'll find a wealth of information in the Careers Academy. There are many free career support resources for you to download. Plus, if you become a member, instant access to my How to Write a Resume program and my LinkedIn for Career Success program. Group coaching calls and a one-on-one coaching call with me is part of membership. So visit www.thecareersacademy.online and you'll find the link in the show notes too. Now, let's find out more about the wonderful Karen Tisdell. Now ranked as one of the top LinkedIn trainers in Australia, Karen began her LinkedIn journey in 2005 as a headhunter. Recognizing that how we are perceived online would become increasingly important to our career success, Karen launched her business that is now focused solely on LinkedIn. As she says, having a standout LinkedIn profile is far more than a resume on steroids. It is your professional reputation. Now, this podcast was recorded in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic, and we share our feelings about these changing times too. So welcome to the show, Karen.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me here, Jane.
And so what do you think about everything that's going on in the world at the moment?
Oh, goodness, it's such a big question. I think it's such a hard time for some, for many, of course, and quite scary time. For myself, I'm not feeling impacted by that. And I think that's on account of, I started my working career in 1991 when the when one of the first recessions started. I think there was a big recession when I was very, very young. There was quite a big recession in 1991, and then I launched my business in 2009 on the next recession. So for me, from an economic instability point of view, that's not so scary for me. But I'm very conscious that so many people are feeling quite physically threatened. It's a weird time, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's not just physically threatened, but emotionally as well. Economically, people are so worried. There are so many businesses that are standing down their employees, or people are taking a large cut in their salaries. The good thing is that the Australian government is stepping in with their JobKeeper and their job seeker allowances, which will help, to a certain extent. But how's that going to affect the economy in months to come as well? There's just so many questions. But right now, I think the priority is stay safe, stay well. And as long as we stay safe and we stay well, and then we can rebuild when all of this is over. And right now is a time to be looking after our families and our loved ones. And also for business owners, it's an important time to think, how can you stay relevant in the eyes of your market so that when things do turn around, you can hit the ground running?
I think this is a time to reach out to people. For me, I'm always saying to people, stay safe, stay well, stay sane. Because I think, we can all help each other's emotional and mental well-being during this time. And I think while I am lucky to be enjoying the extra time with my family, I think there must be a lot of people who are just thinking, oh my God, I'm stuck in a house with this person, or I'm all alone, in a house. So I think this is also a good time for people to look after and look out for each other by reaching out on LinkedIn, making a phone call, checking in with people they love and care for, but also checking in with, with former colleagues, with people they used to work for years ago, with old clients, and potentially even reaching out to new people that they've not spoken to before. And I think, there are opportunities in all of this to build community.
Oh, definitely. You know what I firmly believe is that this will create a huge mindset shift globally, because we've all realized that we've taken so much for granted for too long. The earth, nature, animals, we're going to become, I hope, honestly, I keep my fingers crossed for this, I hope much kinder and more mindful of our own actions moving forward. And now, today, in this podcast, Karen, this is all about you and your career journey. So let's start to find out a little bit more about how your career has progressed, because this podcast really is to inspire people to embrace transition and change. And we are going through changing times at the moment. So how about, just to kick us off, tell us a little bit about what your early career aspirations were when you were a little girl.
When I was a little girl, can I just preface that with something else just before? So when you first invited me onto the podcast, which was a couple of months ago, my imposter syndrome just went really high, and I was like, I'm not too sure I have anything inspiring to say. I just don't think my story is very inspiring at all. And I think the irony of the timing that this is occurring in, as I touched on earlier, I started in the workforce when there was a recession. I launched my business in the GFC. I'm most certainly an accidental entrepreneur. I've pivoted at different times in my life, but just because I could see that there were opportunities, that there was something I could do. And so I hope that by being very uninspiring, I hope that I will help others listening to this to think, well, gosh, if she can do it, I can do it too. I think there are amazing opportunities. So, and I just wanted to get that out there, because I just think the timing of you and I talking right when we're in the middle of all of this, I think it's a perfect time for an uninspiring story, to be frank.
But the thing is that we're all ordinary people trying to do hopefully extraordinary things, and all of us, we're merely human beings after all. And the thing is that things happen to us in our lives, sometimes out of our control. But I truly believe that how we handle the changes is what will be inspiring as well. And so, when you were a little girl, what were your early career aspirations?
Yes, I wanted to be an autobiography writer. So I didn't want to write biographies. I didn't want to write other people's stories in the third person. I used to do a lot of theatre arts at school, and I really enjoyed the idea of acting, but I was a pretty hopeless actor. I usually never get it right, but and hopeless at voices. But I loved words, and I just really wanted to write people's stories. I also wanted to be a psychologist, but I didn't get the grades in the maths, so I really loved the idea of having somebody sitting on a couch and having really intense conversations all day. And I think it's amazing that those are the two things I wanted to do. And they're literally in my school book, where you have to write down in the school interview book or whatever, what do you want to do when you grow up? And those were my two things that I wanted to do. And I think it's quite funny that I went into recruitment for 14 years, as a recruiter for 14 and a half years, where I was having very intense conversations with people who were kind of sitting on a couch. And so I think it's funny how that played out. And then I started writing resumes, and then ditched the resume side and started writing just LinkedIn profiles and focusing more on LinkedIn. It's taken me a long time to ditch the resumes, but I sort of had that transition, that slow transition away from resumes and LinkedIn to just LinkedIn only. And writing resumes and writing LinkedIn profiles, again, it's like writing somebody's story. It's like being an autobiography writer. So, you write in the first person. So I think it's quite funny how my childhood dreams have played out, really.
Yeah, it's interesting how careers really evolve, isn't it? And there's always some common thread that comes through everybody's careers whenever I interview them, because they thought they wanted one thing, but they ended up doing something different. But when you actually break it down, there are so many threads that link it all together. And I know I found that with my own career, and so many of the people that I've interviewed too. But you've had quite a number of transitions. So you are originally from Perth, and then you spent time in the UK, and then you came back to Australia and lived in Perth and Melbourne and Sydney. And so when you were making these transitions, what was it that prompted each transition, and how did you feel when you made them?
I always felt a little bit scared. I said earlier, I don't think I'm a natural entrepreneur. I'm not somebody who is, I don't think of all of these amazing ideas and, run out and chase them. It's more that I get this little voice in my head that thinks, oh, I could do this, I could do this. So for me, leaving school and sort of going, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? My grandfather was in the UK. He was quite elderly and needed somebody to look after him. So it was a family decision. I could go over and live with him and study over there and do all sorts of different things. So it's like why wouldn't I? It was always about taking the road less travelled, but it was often sort of different things happened and I just said yes instead of saying no. I think I have a yes default. So, whereas a lot of people, I think, can often get in their own way, I think a lot of people actually have career opportunities come up to them. And without even realising it, they're saying no to them. I think a lot of people, don't you find the same thing, Jane? A lot of people sort of block themselves off and they have this they're quite fixed in, I'm going to do this and it looks like this, that they won't see all these other opportunities. So for me, I always have this I'd really like to do this, I'd like to do psychology, I'd like to write autobiographies, but then I see these other things and I'm like, well, actually, that's not too dissimilar. So it's just about remaining open for the opportunities and being a bit restless and wanting something that's a bit different.
Yeah. And I think also we have, we develop transferable skills too, because just because you become an expert in one area, it doesn't mean you are stuck in that area. You can always make a transition. And I firmly believe if you can communicate and you have a really good attitude, this can-do attitude that obviously you have, Karen, and you do have a yes mentality, that makes all the difference, because I like to think, well, why not? If there's an opportunity, why not? What's holding me back from doing that? And more often than not, it's the fear. And people often say, oh, I don't want to fail. But what's failure anyway? It's all it is, isn't it? It's an experience. And then you can do something else later and learn from it.
Yeah, but I think that's what makes you so inspiring. I think, you say we are all human. Yes, we are. But I think some people are quite extraordinary. Jane, I'm not mean to being sort of vacuous with the flattery, but I do think you're extraordinary. You have achieved so much. I know you are. You're amazing. All that you've achieved. I remember years ago, I have to say, Jane, years ago, seeing you on Morning Sunrise, So, you are extraordinary. I remember looking at you and thinking, that's who I want to be when I grow up. I think it was done so much. Sky News, was it? Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies. Quite different. No, I would never do Sunrise. All respect to Sunrise. But, I think for myself, it was more about I have had that fear of failure, but I've always looked at things and thought, well, what if it doesn't work out? Then what's my exit strategy? And I know that might sound like a really negative way of thinking, but it's literally like, oh my gosh, I don't want to fail. I don't want to fail. I don't want to fail. Okay, well, let's just say I'll fail, which I probably will. Then what will I do? Okay, so if I go to the UK and I'm going to live over there for years, these are all the things that could happen if it works out. But if it doesn't work out, what's my backup strategy? Oh, well, I'll just come back to Perth, and then I'm in Perth and I'm thinking, oh, I'm a bit bored, I'm a bit restless. Sat down and said to my then boyfriend, I'm feeling a bit restless. I have to tell you, I'm moving to Melbourne. And he said, well, I want to move to Sydney, actually. And I've been wanting to tell you this. We had this conversation and I persuaded him to move to Melbourne for a few years until he won out and we moved to Sydney. But again, it was always the whole, well, if we don't like it, we'll just do this. If it doesn't work out with this guy, I'll just move back to Perth or I'll move somewhere else. I'll try Darwin or, so it's always the whole, if it doesn't work, at least I've given it a shot. And I think a lot of people don't give it a shot, and so much is actually quite reversible.
Yeah, and everybody has options. Sometimes you can't see what the options are, and that's when you need to get out of your head and talk to someone who maybe can be a mentor or a guide. And I think with your really valuable experience in the earlier days in recruitment as well, you've met so many people, you've spoken to so many people, you've seen people be nervous in interviews, you've seen people oversell in interviews, you've seen, the good, the bad, and everything in between, right? And so that's given you a very strong insight into people and how important, as you say, the storytelling is. Now, what I'm really interested in, Karen, is in addition to the recruitment experience, and actually I'm writing an article on recruiters. I need to get some of your input for that. Okay, so we'll talk about that after the podcast. But then you transitioned into helping people in their careers, and then you transitioned into LinkedIn profile writing specifically, and that's what you're niching in now. Yes. So what
Yes.
made you make the pivots and come to where you are today?
Yeah, it wasn't a straightforward journey. I was a recruiter, and I started on maternity leave right when the GFC hit. I really wanted to go back to work, but work wasn't as it had been. And I wanted to go back to work really, really quickly. My baby was all of about 8 weeks old when I said to my husband, I need to work. And he was horrified. He was so horrified. We actually had some pretty big arguments about it. He was like, how can you not want to stay at home with a baby? And I'm like, I want to be with her, but I also want to work as well. I just need to work. I was very late having children. I was 36, and work was a big part of my identity. And I couldn't find anything that was right. The idea of going into recruitment, that was a 5-day-a-week job. And I've always been the person in the office who was writing all the job adverts, taking a really boring job and dressing it up. I've always been the person, the recruiter, who was saying, why don't you do your resume like this? And, this is what you need to say in an interview and da-da-da. So I've always done that sort of interview. Coaching has been a really large part of my recruitment process. If I put forward some candidates and Michael Page put forward some candidates, they were my biggest competitors, my candidates would get the job because I would make sure that their resume was awesome, interview practice was awesome. I'd sort of line it all up, and I was deeply interested in people and those intense conversations. So I started writing resumes from home. I was an early adopter of LinkedIn. I've been using LinkedIn since 2005 to headhunt people. So while I was writing resumes, I would do a little bit on their LinkedIn profile and just show them a little bit around how to navigate LinkedIn. But it was LinkedIn was one thing I ticked off. The focus was really the resume. But it always did include LinkedIn and a little bit of interview skills. And it actually wasn't until people like yourself and a couple of other people just came across my radar, and somebody I'd met spoke about going through a career transition, and they said, you could do this face to face. And I thought, oh, wow, that's amazing, because I hadn't figured out for a while a way to get out of my pajamas and wash the baby vomit out of my hair and actually put on a suit and meet people. So this idea of career transition was fantastic. So I contacted Talent 2, and I went back to Chatham Cloud and said, will you take me on as a career transition specialist? And some of them said no, because you don't have a psych degree, and career transition is all about talking about your feelings and how you feel about the change. And what I was always an expert in and enjoyed was the stuff you can see. The interview practice was something I enjoyed absolutely least. Like I'd do it, but I didn't really enjoy it. I really loved the resume piece. I really loved the LinkedIn stuff. I loved the stuff you could see. So it just sort of morphed from there, But I took it, before I did the career transition stuff, I went back to recruitment for 9 months. It's not on my LinkedIn profile. I went back and did that for a while. It was right down the road from my house. It was good pay. I literally was walking to work. It's amazing. And but I hated it. I just hated it, and I quit, and my husband was angry again. He said, why are you quitting? And I'm like, I think my own business could do better. I think I could do better myself. So to set myself up, I'd had an ABN for years, since my baby was about 8 weeks old, and started writing resumes from home. But I just thought, okay, well, I'll go to all of these career transition businesses and say, can you take me on as like a subcontractor? And I'll come in and do the resume and LinkedIn piece. And then I pivoted again away from resumes into LinkedIn, because the resume side was just, you get a lot of scope creep. You look at a resume and you think it's going to take so long. You think, oh yeah, this is going to take 8 hours. And I was writing it for them. Sometimes I coach people on how to do the resume themselves, but typically I was writing it for them and doing more of the LinkedIn writing. And and it ended up being 15 hours. And I just was finding it quite tedious. All of the resume stuff, I was just losing interest in that. And I could see that LinkedIn was really that's, it's like a resume online, right? This is, everybody gets a job through people they know. It's your network that matters so much. So your resume is just kind of that kind of seals the deal, but it's LinkedIn that's the icebreaker. So I felt that was really the more exciting piece. But it took me a long time to ditch resumes. It really did, because I was like, what if I say I'm not doing it anymore and I don't get enough business, So again, there was that fear there. So I'd take it off my profile. I don't know if you noticed, Jen, because we've been connected for years, right? But I'd sort of take it off my profile, put it back on, take it off, put it back on, take it off, put it back on, because it just took me a while to sort of get comfortable with being, okay, I'm just LinkedIn. That's what I do.
And I think niching is so important when you're running your own business as well, because if you've become known for something in particular, then people will go to you for that thing. And so often when I'm coaching my clients, I think, well, I can do this and I can do this and I can do this. Actually, yesterday in a webinar that I conducted, I was looking at somebody's profile and I said, to be quite honest, you've got the kitchen sink in there, and it's all in one paragraph, which is only 2 sentences long, but I'm so confused because who are you serving? Who's your target audience? You need to really write in such a way that people get it right away and tell the right story so that you attract the people that you wish to attract, and that the people who land on your profile are the ones that you want to serve, understand you're the one for me.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also understanding that not everybody's going to be a client. I think that, the default in me of I have to be all things to all people. I have to be, liked, if you like. That was so important to me for so long, oh, but what if I missed out on a client? I want to have all these clients. And, it just took a couple of really clever people. Had a conversation with James Bawtry, actually, and who's the other chap, one that you would know who does career transition work, Chris. And he said, yes, Chris, wow, absolutely, spot on. Spot on, lovely man. And he said, what's getting in the way? Like, are you okay? You seem a bit sort of busy today. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry. It's just, I'm so under the pump, and I had exactly the same conversation with James Bawtry as Chris Patterson in the same week. And both of them asked me the same question: what's getting in the way of your business being the way it wants, you want it to be? And I said, the resumes. And they said, so stop doing it. I'm like, but what if I don't have any more work? They said, just back yourself, see how you go. And that's why I sort of kept putting it on, taking it off, putting it on, taking it off.
What's interesting is sometimes you have to think, there's a saying that I love so much, is if you swim too close to the shore, you'll never get to the other side. And this is the thing, you have to take a leap of faith at times as well, and 100% back yourself, because what's the worst thing that could happen?
Yeah, your saying's much better than mine. Mine was, and I think I read it somewhere, burn the boats. You've got to burn the boats, which again is just losing sight of shore. And it feels scary for somebody like me who always likes to have a backup plan, but what if, but actually that's where the money is. That's where the gold is in niching and deciding, what you want to be known for and who you best serve, and not being afraid of being a little bit like Vegemite. You might not be everybody's flavour, and that's okay. It's actually better to have.
What's really funny? I say this in almost every workshop I do, and I said it again yesterday. You just reminded me that, gosh, I say this a lot. I always say towards the end, now I'm not everybody's cup of tea. Some of you will love me, some of you won't, and that's fine with me. Because you've got to choose the person you want to work with, that you resonate with the most. And I want to work with people who want to work with me as well. So there you go. You'll always find your own, the word tribe has been used so much, but you find your own community of people who end up being your raving fans, and then they recommend you, and then your business grows. And when you take a calculated risk and okay, I'm going to niche here, but I do have a backup plan. There is an exit strategy just in case. And you think, okay, well, there's always that, but I'm really going to go for it now. And that's what you've done, right? Very successfully, Karen.
Yeah, and I think you've got to set a calendar. You've got to go, well, let's go hard on it and not half-hearted. Let's see how it's going to go. And let's set myself, because coming from that recruitment background, I'm hardwired to always, what are my KPIs? How many people am I going to connect with a week? How am I going to deepen those relationships? Who am I going to reach out to? And, how many posts am I going to do per week? How many comments on other people's posts? Literally KPIing, and it's just my KPIs, but sort of setting yourself, what are my business activities that are going to drive me towards that? So sort of discovering what your goal is and then working backwards from that. A lot of people just put one step in front of the other without really working out what their goal is. And to me, that's just like to use your beautiful expression, it's like swimming along the shore without any idea of where you're going. You don't even know which, direction you're going, just kind of doing laps.
No roadmap. If there's no destination, if there's no ultimate goal, what's the point? You'll just be going here, you'll be going there, you'll be flailing around, and you may as well just be in a dinghy lost in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah. Having that vision in your mind of what it could look like, which is why I moved to the UK, why I moved back, and why when I was in Perth, I said to the guy I'm with, look, I have to tell you, I think you're wonderful, but I'm going to move to Melbourne. He was like, well, actually, I was going to move to Sydney. So having this idea that actually I want to be in a bigger city, I want to do more things, and having that really clear vision and then building the steps to get you there. I think it's so worth it.
And just when as you're talking, and as I'm sure everybody in the listeners will be thinking, what did they do when they were younger? How did they feel when there was an opportunity that maybe they knocked back? What would have happened if they had those sliding doors sort of moments? And I just think of all the different opportunities that I've had and you've had, and obviously the listeners will have had in their lives. How exciting to have the opportunities to make a choice as well. And how sad it would be if there was an opportunity and you always said no, because you thought, I don't know if it'll work out and it makes me feel a bit uncomfortable. But as soon as you leap out there, who knows? And we tend to grow as well. And I think especially in today's climate with, coronavirus and so much uncertainty and what's going to happen in the future, it's finding ways to overcome the challenges. Many people will pivot their businesses as well. Do you think that you're going to pivot during this crisis, Karen?
I have already pivoted a bit. So, and again, it's always that whole, what do I need to do right now? So constantly assessing the situation you're in and just taking an action. I think most people either say no to stuff or they just simply don't act on it. They just don't act. They think, I'll think about it some more. And then before you know it, everybody else is doing it. I'm sure so many other people had this Airbnb idea and, Uber idea, and nobody acted on it. The difference is in the action. And so for me, I've been doing, some, as well as writing LinkedIn profiles, I do some LinkedIn training as well. And so the first thing I did was I looked at my calendar. I was like, okay, I've got all of these LinkedIn events and they're not going to move ahead because they're all face-to-face. So the first thing I did was change my headline to LinkedIn webinars. The second thing I did was change my skills. I put in, online LinkedIn coaching. And the third thing was to change my background banner so that instead of me standing on a stage, 3 stages, actually 3 images with lots of people in front of me, me on a computer screen, sort of this is what it could look like. So, yeah, so I think
all part of the branding as well. I think so many people don't realize how important that cover image is, because that just it's your web page, basically. It's your picture to the world, and being able to get the right message across is so important. A number of my clients have changed their profiles as well, and what I put for mine was, if you need help, it just says now, I don't know if you've seen, but it says if you need help, then join my Facebook accountability group. And that's it's got the link there, so at least if someone's feeling a bit anxious, that's what they can do. And this morning I was going through your profile as well for the history of the UK and the Perth and everywhere else, and I thought that's a really beautiful cover image that you've got. I like it. Looks really nice.
Thank you. I wish I'd washed my hair before I took the photo, but anyway.
I was going to say, Karen, I mentioned that.
My hair in a greasy one. But anyway, so don't look too closely at the picture. But, I think the point is just taking that action, just moving. And I think most people, you know, that branding piece, most people think that they are far more memorable than they actually are. And I think that I have been so lucky to be remarkably average looking, average height.
You are beautiful.
No, I am remarkably average looking, remarkably sort of, you know, I've developed a couple of niche talents that I've just refined and practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced. But I don't particularly have a special skill that stood out at, you know, school or when I was studying. You know, so for me, you know, and my name's Karen. You know, I went to school, in my high school, seriously, one of 5 Karens. Everybody was Karen, Sharon, or Tracy. You know, so we all were.
Wait a minute. I'm a Jane. Now, you can't get more plain than that.
My eldest daughter is called Jane, so I have to say it's a name choice. I love. It is. And the same spelling as well. But there are not many Janes now. But I think being remarkably average, truly, I realised quite young that people would just forget I was there, that because I just looked the same as everybody else, sounded the same as everybody else, you know, sort of Caucasian, brunette hair, sort of average height. So I think I realised quite young how non-special I was and how I needed to actually be saying something that was authentic, that was speaking from the heart, talking about my interests, really connecting with people and developing that gravitas to stay memorable and to get memorable and then to stay memorable, because just because you've made an impact once doesn't mean that people remember you. And I think that most people think that they're far more memorable than they really are. So I think a lot of people don't invest time in their LinkedIn profile. And I may be a bit biased here, but I think they should, because they think they're really special. They're like, oh, I know that person. I met him 15 years ago and we had a great conversation. I'm like, he probably doesn't know who you are anymore. You know, and I think people think, you know, they don't update their LinkedIn profile because they're like, oh, but what if everybody noticed that I've made a change? And I'm like, nobody's looking at your profile one week and then looking at and printing it out and looking at it the week next after and go, oh, it's changed a word. What does that mean? Nobody notices. People think they're far more special than they.
You know, it's the same thing with shy people who don't want to go to a networking event because they don't want people to laugh at them. And I always say, you know, if you're feeling really shy and you go to an event and you think people are going to laugh at you, just go in there and stand at the door and look around and see if anyone notices that you are even standing there, right? So people are more interested in themselves. So if you act interested in them, they will naturally gravitate towards you because people like to talk. But, you know, as you were saying about the ordinariness, it reminds me of back in 2001, 2002, I was working with a client and his name is Russell Veach, and he's top of mind now because we just did a Zoom webinar together about 2 days ago. And after I was coaching him, and he made this big career transition at the age of 52. So it's been nearly 20 years now, and he's still going strong with his business. I'm so proud of him. But he gave me this lovely paperweight as a thank you at the end, and it's a rock, and engraved in the rock it says, real leaders are ordinary people with extraordinary determination. Yes. And that has been so special, and it's, you know, pride of place here in my home office as well, always, because I always think, yeah, you know, it's like, it's the people who do extraordinary things. It's not the privileged few, it's ordinary people doing amazing things. And I think that's the important thing. And that's what you're doing now, Karen. You're doing extraordinary things and helping so many people. And you have so much passion in what you do, which I think is you know, it's fantastic. And you've really carved out a wonderful niche for yourself and doing very well. And I think in these coronavirus days, when there are a lot of people who are feeling a bit anxious and not sure about their own branding and what's going to happen to them next, services such as yours for businesses as well as for individuals will be very valuable. And I think for all of us, you know, I'm a LinkedIn trainer, but I focus on career transition. That's my main niche. But all of us are here to serve the people who need help. Yes?
Yes, absolutely. And I just hope, I just wish that everybody would just take some time out, if they're feeling down, to get out a piece of paper and just literally write down all the things that they're good at. I remember when I came back from, when I was in the UK, and I was doing, as all Aussies do, working behind a bar, and I literally went from regular customer to regular customer and said, what do you think I should do for a living? Like, what do you reckon I'd be good at? And resoundingly, it was, journalism or sales or something like that. So it was all around people and writing. And that was coming up because you've always got your head in a book. You're always carrying books around, and you love words. You're always pouncing on, oh, that's an interesting word. So just hearing, now is the time, to get on and email all your friends, start some sort of Facebook quiz. What are the 3 words you'd use to describe me? And sit down and write down what all your strengths are, what your interests are. Because I think when you talk with real passion about what it is you're interested in, then you attract it to you.
Absolutely.
Because you're talking about it. And again, that all comes back to that branding piece. Too many people, I think, have LinkedIn profiles that talk to what it is they used to do, or that says what they think they should say, not what it is they really want to say. And there's nothing memorable in that.
No. LinkedIn profile always should be aspirational. It's your hopes and dreams and what you hope to attract, yes? Yes. What, Karen? We could talk all day about LinkedIn. As you know, we could just wrap it on forever. But it has been so interesting hearing your career journey. And now if people wanted to get in touch with you, where would they find you? LinkedIn, of course.
You didn't ask me that question, did you? Well, I think it might be LinkedIn. Just yes. Pointing out, though, I have had 2 people once on a webinar this week spelled my name wrong. So let's blame my husband on that. So my last name is Tisdell. So it's a misspelling of Tisdale. It is Tisdell, as in Dell Computers. So find me on LinkedIn, and of course I think there's very few variations for Karen, right? Karen Tisdell.
Well, what I'll do is in my show notes on janejacksoncoach.com/podcast, I will have the links to Karen's LinkedIn profile as well, and a little bit of a bio there too. And so do hop over there, and you can listen to this podcast on iTunes or Spotify or TuneIn Radio or YouTube or SoundCloud. It'll be all over. So I hope that this has been inspiring to everyone who's been listening in, because I've had the very lovely Karen Tisdell on with me. So thank you so much for your time, Karen. It's been really a pleasure.
Thank you so much. I hope everybody has said, stays well and stays sane during this time. And I hope that everybody takes action, right, to list on all the things they're good at.
That's lovely. Thank you so much, Karen, and we will be talking to you again very soon.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Cheers, Jane.
If you enjoyed this podcast, go over to iTunes and leave a review. And watch out for my next episode, 199, with Joseph Oconee, who's a product manager at LinkedIn, and he is the one who invented the voice pronunciation feature, which I love using. If you hop over to my LinkedIn profile, you'll be able to hear what I say in 10 seconds right from my profile, and you can hear how you pronounce my name. Not that it's that hard to pronounce. See you in episode 199.